Whole sports all plays. Yeah. Whole sports all plays. Whole sports all plays. 365, we making up plays. You talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety topics living the same. All presentation, sports information. Hitting the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, like working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. Whole sports all plays. Network. Whole sports all plays. Network. We on top of our game. Whole sports all plays. Whole sports all plays.
Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Bring It. I am your host, Big Dog. We got Ray coming in a little bit, and we have a very special guest tonight. We have author Jeffrey Rasley. He's from Indianapolis, a brilliant author, wrote a great new book about pickleball, and some of you might not know what pickleball is. We're going to talk about it. It's a very cool sport. It seems like it's a combination of like tennis and ping pong. It's an outdoor sport. Played at a lot of the country clubs, but a very, very cool sport. He's a brilliant author, brilliant guy. And we're going to talk to him a little bit and hear all about his new book and how you can get it. But as we always do every Monday night, we start off talking about the National Football League and tonight's Monday Night Football game. And there he is, Jai Shields in the house. What up, Jai?
My apologies, yo, for being a minute or so late. I am doing wonderful, my friend. How about yourself?
Oh, it is so good to see you, man. Those of you who don't know, this is the great Jai Shields, host of the I'm Gonna Tell It Like a TISS podcast, brilliant sportscaster, a brilliant and up-and-comer young buck in the game. You got to watch out for this guy. He's going to be a superstar before we know it. Jai, thanks so much for joining me tonight. You know, we got a huge game tonight. The first place Arizona Cardinals against the LA Rams. A lot of news broke a couple hours ago. The Rams basically are running on fumes tonight. They got about 5 players, including Jalen Ramsey and Darrell Henderson, on the COVID list. So does that give them a chance tonight, or are they pretty much toast?
Listen, even if Ramsey and Higbee were go-ahead tonight, I like the Arizona Cardinals in this game. Simply because of the fact of how I just like the feel of Arizona. You know, they're a young team. They got their feet underneath them. They had a rough stretch the last few weeks of last year. Kingsbury has completely turned it around from how he's been coaching last year. So I would have liked the Cardinals regardless, even if Higbee and Ramsey were a go-ahead tonight. But they aren't, which just gives me more of a reason to like Arizona. Kyler Murray, had a phenomenal game against Chicago last week. And when he and DeAndre Hopkins are back healthy and are clicking on all cylinders in the passing game, watch out, because it's going to be hell to pay for opposing defense. Then on the Rams side, they have not been able to run the football tremendously well. They miss Cam Akers in a worst way imaginable. Darrell Henderson Jr. is not the short-term answer for Los Angeles. And I got to see it to believe it for Matthew Stafford to win big-time, meaningful December regular season games, especially on the road, in order for me to believe it. So heading even prior to the COVID news, I was not big on the Rams prior to tonight, but with Ramsey out and with Higbee out as late scratches, I expect the Arizona Cardinals to show up and show out and essentially steal the number 1 seed from the Green Bay Packers in the NFC when it's all said and done.
Yeah, no, they definitely should. And it's funny. I'm going to talk about Arizona last week for a second, because even though they played Chicago, and we're all like, get Nagy off my TV screen, because you saw the way they tanked last night. But them going to Chicago last week, and it was cold. And that Arizona team, they're a warm weather team, they're an indoor team, but them being able to go to the cold, I think, is a big proving ground for them, especially with Kyler Murray and Hopkins coming off injury, because them going into the cold, even if say they don't hold on to the 1 seed and they have to go to Green Bay, it proves that they can play in that cold weather. I think a big stepping stone for a young team like that.
100%. And that's and real. It's funny that you brought that up because that is one of my biggest fears, especially for the Rams, because chances are, let's say the Cardinals win tonight, the Cardinals may end up getting number one. They may not be favored to win the Super Bowl, but they most likely could get and lock up the number one seed in the NFC, which means most likely, unless if they go out in the first round, of course they don't play the following week, obviously.
Right.
But they lock up the number one seed. They won't have to leave. They won't have to leave Arizona. They go.
Right.
They play in Arizona for 2 weeks. They win divisional weekend, conference championship, and it's out west to Los Angeles to go ahead and play the Super Bowl. They don't have to worry about the cold January and early February weather.
Or the time change.
That as well too, that plays a part into it too. Meanwhile, on the flip side of things with the Rams, because the Cardinals have such a tremendous lead in the NFC, West, and the fact that the Rams do not have the tiebreaker over. Now I understand that they're ahead of San Francisco, but the fact that San Francisco is still a road hurdle for this team, and the fact that Arizona has such a tremendous leading NFC West, the Rams are going to they're not moving from that 5 spot. They are going to have to essentially do what the Bucs did last year, and that's earn the right to play a Super Bowl in their home stadium by going out and playing 3 road games. And even though Tampa, outside of Brady and a couple, Mike Evans, playoff inexperience, Bruce, they had the advantage for Bruce Arians last year because Bruce Arians was a good coach and ironically enough took the Cardinals to the playoffs a couple of times. But Brady has no issues going out. He did it for 20 years, going out and playing in that East Coast January cold. He's good at playing great football in that as well as anybody. Right. On the flip side of the Rams, you got a quarterback in Matthew Stafford, who albeit played in the NFC North, playing in some pretty damn cold weather cities such as Chicago and Green Bay, but also spent time playing against the Vikings on the road twice every single year for about a decade. And on top of the fact he's a member of the Lions, playing in a dome having 8 home games indoors in a dome. On top of the fact he's never won a playoff game, his playoff resume is very minute. And this is a team that you saw how they played in Green Bay last year. I mean, they were not a factor in the Green Bay playoff game last year. And any single time it feels like when the Rams have to go on the road to they played the Saints in the NFC Championship game 2 years ago, again in an indoor scenario. And that's one of the reasons why I hate to kind of look ahead to later weeks. But that's one of the reasons why I do not expect the Rams to beat the Ravens. I understand the Ravens are injured to hell and back, and Lamar Jackson and everything else, and the defense has not been great. Everything else. Here's my line about the Rams. Now, I do not trust the Rams to go into hostile buildings, whether it's Baltimore, whether it's Green Bay, wherever, go into hostile territories, especially if it's outdoor cold weather in January and they have to deal with that. Especially when they cannot run the football well.
Yeah, that's a 425 game, definitely. But it's interesting, looking at Arizona's schedule, they don't play outside the rest of the year. They're home against the Rams. They're in Detroit next week, indoors. Home against Indy, indoors. In Dallas, indoors, because in January it's cold in Dallas, and Jerry's going to have that roof closed. He doesn't want to be freezing in his superstar box. And then they end the season home against Seattle. So they didn't even have to play outdoors. So I mean, with that kind of schedule, not playing outdoors, this team could definitely run the table and get the 1 seed, if you ask me.
100%, and if you're the Rams, you're like, listen, your goal, if you're the Cardinals, your goal should be, we should not have to play another game either outside in cold temperatures or either outside or in cold temperatures again until the 2022 season. Right. Here's what I told my team: make sure that every single game we play the rest of the way, the referees are wearing the regular short sleeve referee tops instead of those big, long, bulky referee jackets that they have.
Exactly.
That's what I tell my team. Tell my team, listen, our goal should be every single time we go out there on the field for pregame warm-ups, look
Right.
over and find the closest referee and make sure that he's wearing short sleeves. And
Right.
making sure that when you talk, breath doesn't come out of your mouth, and make sure that you're profusely sweating when you get on the sidelines because you're either playing in a warm weather climate or you're playing indoors. That
Right.
if I'm Kingsbury, that's what I would tell my team.
No, exactly, exactly. Yeah, and plus, guys, I know you want to go out and hang out, but don't go anywhere. We don't need anybody testing positive for COVID. We don't need anybody going down at this point in the season,
Yes,
because
definitely.
with players falling left and right with positive tests, that's all Arizona would need is that kind of thing. So
Mhm.
basically, we're both in agreement that we like the Cardinals tonight. We like the Cardinals big. I think the spread is 3, so I definitely see them covering the night for sure. Probably like a 28-20 kind of game, maybe even 30 in the 30s, something like that. Definitely a higher scoring game. Without Ramsey in the secondary, I mean, who's going to guard D Hop? I don't see anybody. They still got
100%.
Green on the other side. They've got the tight end now, Zach Ertz. I mean, I can't see them being stopped. And that crowd a Monday night game in Arizona. When's the last time that happened? Those guys are going to be pumped in that stadium.
It's been a minute.
It's been a minute. It's gonna be
It's been a
loud.
minute.
So to my boy Jay Ness, Arizona big tonight. I say. So give us an official prediction, Jay.
Well, here's the interesting stat: the Rams have won 8 of their last 9 games against the Cardinals. And I forget the my exact prediction on my show about a few days ago. But I'm gonna say Cardinals 27, Rams 17. I
All
say the
right.
Cardinals win by 10.
All right, there we go, and hopefully the Cardinals will start a run here and will lock up that number 1 seed. So we can hear Aaron Rodgers complain a little bit more, but we'll talk a little bit more about him later,
Yeah.
that type of thing. Well, we have an amazing guest tonight, a great author, Mr. Jeffrey Rasley is in the house. Tony, why don't we bring Jeff into the conversation right now? Jeff has a brand new book. There he is. Jeff, how are you? Welcome to Bring It.
Great. Glad to be with you guys. Thanks for
Thank you.
having me.
Thank you for coming. Jeff has written a great new book called A Pickleball Soap Opera, Love, Murder, and Pickleball. Now, for those of us who don't know, I live in Boca Raton, Florida, a lot of country clubs down here. I kind of know what pickleball is because some of my clients play it. But to the general audience, tell us what is pickleball?
Well, you don't play it with a pickle. Yeah. It's played on a downsized tennis court. The court's about 2/3 the size of a tennis court. The net is 2 inches lower.
Mhm.
And you use paddles instead of rackets. And the paddles are a little bit bigger than ping pong paddles. And the ball is a wiffle ball.
Oh, okay.
So the game is especially popular with older people because if you've been a tennis player, you have fewer steps to run because smaller
Right.
court to cover, and because the ball is so light, when you impact it with a paddle, less force on your arm, and because a paddle is much lighter than a racket and it's much smaller, even less force on your arm. So it's according to a number of sources I researched, it is the fastest growing sport worldwide, and especially in America, and especially among retired people like
Hmm.
me.
Wow. So who knows? We might be seeing this in the Olympics someday. You never know, right?
I think someday for sure.
Very, very cool. So what made you want to write like a mystery book incorporated with this sport and putting the two together? Like what kind of inspired you to put this book together?
Yeah, and it's not the first novel I've written, but most of my books are about mountaineering in the Himalayas, which
Hmm.
I've done a lot of, and some sort of political commentary type books. But this is my third novel, and so I wanted to write another novel because it had been a while, and Mark Twain said you should write what you know. And since the pandemic has cut my social life down to the term you guys used a few minutes ago, minuscule. Pickleball has been my outlet during the pandemic. And so that's what I've known a lot of for the last couple of years, because I've gone from climbing mountains in the Himalayas to playing pickleball.
Oh,
It's
wow.
a sad decline. But and so I wanted to use it and be able to sort of work into what I hope is an enjoyable story, how to play the game and kind of promote the game, but do it not just in a sort of technical, here's how you do manual, but into a fun story. So the story has CIA spies and Al Qaeda terrorists, and this pickleball group in northern Ohio gets embroiled in this, at least imagined, international conspiracy that goes from Ohio to Afghanistan.
Wow. Wow, that's quite the book. So basically, it's one of those stories I think is a nice little small town wholesome thing, and all of a sudden it just blows up.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And
That-
there's also a romance in it.
well, you got to have romance, yes, of
Yeah.
course.
So we've got romance, we've got murder, we've got international conspiracy, spies. Yeah, the whole bit.
Cool, cool. And I know the book's available on Amazon. Is there any other? Is the book available in stores? What other outlets can people find the book?
Yeah, any store that has a distribution contract with Amazon can get it. I also have a website where all of my books are sold, which is just my full name, jeffreyrasley.com. But yeah, the Amazon is the easiest place to get it.
Like most things today, right?
Yeah, that's
Like
right.
most things today.
From
Now,
pickleball socks to pickleball books.
exactly, exactly. Now I read that you were a retired lawyer. You used to practice law. What kind of law did you practice?
Well, I had a general practice, but a lot of trial work. I was in court quite a bit. So, but I handled just any kind of case you can imagine, from child molesters to CEO 500
Wow,
presidents.
wow, that must be. I mean, I can imagine some of the child thing being some really intense cases, right?
Uh, yeah, so the very first case I had right out of law school was defending a mother whose boyfriend had raped her two children,
Oh,
and
wow.
the state was wanted to take the kids away from her and charge her criminally. And getting into a case like that right out of law school, it was, okay,
Yeah.
I'm in the frying pan.
Yeah, that's a sink or swim kind of court case. That's
Yes.
amazing. I want to talk about your Himalayan expeditions. I've always, my wife and I have started hiking now and hiking through some of the national parks here. Obviously, hiking in the Himalayas is just a sport in itself. So tell me a little bit about how you prepare to hike in those mountains. Like what goes into it, and like what kind of drew you to that whole. I know you do something in Nepal as with something with something in Nepal, if I'm correct, right? Like a charity or something, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, I have a foundation. I mean, it's a 501c3 corp, so I mean, it's not mine, but I started it.
Mhm.
And yeah, that grew out of my desire to give back to this country that's very poor, but has given so much to me, from wonderful, adventurous experiences. But the test that I tell people when they're going to go on a trek or a mountaineering expedition with me, the way you can tell if you're in shape enough to go trekking in the Himalayas is if you can get on a stair climber, an elliptical, something, a machine that you can set at an incline, a good incline, and a fairly tough resistance, and you can go for 45 minutes straight at a good pace. You're sufficiently fit to do a trek.
Right.
To do a climb, you got to take that up to an hour. But if you can do that for an hour, you can handle the climb. because our guides are really professional, and they really know how to look for warning signs if somebody's just overtaxed, dehydrated, something like that. And so we try to let everybody go at their own pace. So we'll have a guide up front and a guide in back of the group. So if you start going slower than other people in the group, you're going to have one of the guides with you. If you're a hard charger and you want to just turn this into a race, we're going to have a Nepali guide who, I don't care how fit you are, you're not going to be able to outrun him because he lives up there.
Right.
So
But now
that's
I
how
can
we
imagine
keep
that
it.
I can imagine the air is it gets thinner and thinner as you get up there. How do you prepare for that part of it?
Yeah. Well, when you live in Indiana, it's not easy. People, when I'm in a group with people that like live in Colorado, live in the mountains, they
Mhm.
have a real advantage. But there's a formula that we use so that we try to avoid anybody getting high altitude sickness, and that is uh, you can go up and down, so gain as much altitude as whatever during the day, but you
Mhm.
get altitude sickness at night.
Oh,
And
okay.
so the way we schedule our campsites is we don't camp higher than 1,000-foot gain from one night to the next. So you
Oh,
might gain 4,000 feet hiking during the day, but you're going to sleep no more than 1,000 feet higher than you did the night before.
oh,
And
I
for
see.
most people, you're not gonna get altitude sickness.
Wow, wow, that's absolutely amazing. I can imagine you have some incredible photos, incredible stories from that. Have you written a book about that yet, or is that something in the works?
I've actually written 3 books about that.
Oh,
So
cool.
my let's see, I think my 11th book was called "You Have to Get Lost Before You Can Be Found," and that's all about adventures I had in Nepal. And the title comes from a chapter title where I got lost alone on a mountain because I did something dumb. Uh, I got ahead of our guide, and there several of the people in the group were sick, and there was just this little mountain. It was only a little over 14,000 feet high, so not a really challenging peak in the Himalayas.
Mm.
But so I decided I'd just do it on my own, and I got up to the top, and then clouds rolled in, and I only had about 10 feet visibility, and I
Ooh.
couldn't find the standard route down. And so I spent all of the day and into the night trying to find my way back to base camp, and our crew and the other climbers in the group were out looking for me, and so I I had to get lost before I could be found, and so that's sort of the climax of the book.
Wow, wow, that is crazy. Did you play any sports when you were younger? I think I read here that you played football. Is that correct?
Yeah, in college I played football, rugby, and swam.
Okay.
So 3 sports in college.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I read here, it says you played football on the team People magazine called the worst team in college football. Is that correct?
Yeah, in fact, it's even worse than that. People magazine dissed us. The title of the article was "The Worst Team in College Ball." They didn't even limit it to football.
What school was that?
University of Chicago,
Oh,
which
wow.
I've also written a book about that, and it was University of Chicago has this really weird and wonderful football history,
Mhm.
because back in the early part of the century, Amos Alonzo Stagg was the winningest coach in college football. The Stagg Bowl,
Right.
Division III, named after him. Bear Bryant eventually broke his record, but
Right.
he won 7 Big Ten titles, 3 national championships, and then in 1939, the university dropped football and dropped out of the Big Ten. And in 1969, they reinstated varsity football. And I played on the team in the mid-70s, so just a few years after it had been restarted. And the school budgeted very little money to it. They had no recruiting. We had guys on the team that had never played football in high school. We just needed bodies. And the school had a policy that you could not be disciplined for missing a practice or a game for any academic reason. So I would schedule 2 classes a week to conflict with practice. So I only went to practice 3 times a week. And because I wanted to play football, but I didn't want to play it every day.
Right.
And plus I had, I was working and so forth. But so the guys that made up the team were a bunch of hippies. I mean, there were guys smoking pot in the back of the bus. And it was a very weird and wonderful team to be on with. So a lot of kind of funny, crazy stories went with that. And
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. So are you still a football fan? Do you have a team that you root for?
Well, living in Indy, of course, I'm a Colts fan. I grew up a Bears fan because I grew up in northern Indiana, not far from Chicago. But I have, when Peyton came, I became a Colts fan.
As did most people when Peyton came to town.
It made it easy to let go of that loyalty to the Bears. And Walter Payton had retired, so.
Understandable.
But yeah, so I'm a Colts fan.
Cool. We got like a minute left, so just kind of give me your take on the Colts this year. Do you think they have what it takes to make the playoffs, or are they kind of going to fall short? What do you think?
It's they started out so badly, but I mean, 2 games they lost by a point, end of the game, and the team has played really well when they played really well. Like they blew out Buffalo.
Right.
So I think it's going to be really close, and their schedule is pretty tough from here out.
Yes, they do have a tough schedule.
Yeah. So fingers crossed.
We'll see what happens. Well, everybody, once again, Mr. Jeffrey Rasley, go check out his book on Amazon. You can go to his website. Jeff, thanks so much for coming on Bring It. We really appreciate you having you, and good luck with everything.
Well, thank you guys. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed listening to you two before I came on.
All right.
So
well, we're gonna talk some more. We're gonna talk some more football after this break. We will be right back after our commercial break.
Whole sports all plays. Whole sports all plays. Whole sports all plays. 365, we making a plays. You talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. Hitting the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, they working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. All sports, all plays. Network. All sports, all plays. Network. We on top of our game. All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays.
All right, we are back after the nice commercial break. That was great, man. Really enjoyed talking to him. Great stories there, talking about Amos Alonso Stagg going old school on us, John, making us feel old there. You know what I'm saying?
And I mean, making me feel like a baby, for crying out loud. I mean, I had no idea the University of Chicago was one of like the original Big Ten teams. That was a very interesting tidbit there at the end.
Yeah,
of
or something new. You got next time you talk to Chris, you gotta drop that on him, see what he says, right?
Yeah, like, oh, Eddie, gotta get him on. He went to the University of Chicago. Eddie, you gotta get him on. Get a call up, Eddie. 5:15 on you can't do Tuesday because you got Peter King. Wednesday got Ara, gonna be a little bit of a tricky scenario. Friday they got Phil and then Lombardi with the picks. So we'll put him on Thursday at 5:15. Eddie, get him up. Call him up.
That is great. Oh, that is classic. I love it. All right, so much football to talk about tomorrow from yesterday, but you know what? The floor is yours about your Bengals or Bungles, whatever you want to call them. The floor is yours. Go.
Let me sound off on these sacks of bums right quick. And I wrote down plenty of my notes. I got to get my notes ready. Okay, first off, let's begin with this. Okay. Bengals had the ball, 1st and 10 at San Francisco's 26-yard line in the overtime. Did you know, Big Dog, they did not attempt a pass one time? They did not attempt to pass. And on one time, you can quote unquote say they attempted to pass. Burrow got sacked on a 3rd down. When they decided to run the ball on 1st and 2nd down. When Joe Burrow in the overtime period was 2 of 2 for 50 passing yards. And Joe Mixon, who I love and put together another 1,000-yard season, and his streak of going games with consecutive touchdowns came to an end. Obviously, late yesterday afternoon. But I love Joe Mixon, and when healthy, he's one of the best backs in all of football. So this is don't get it twisted. This is not any slander or any shade towards Joe Mixon. But you know this, and everybody else that's watching and listening to this knows this. Sports, sometimes you're going to have a bad game. Sometimes you might not make a hell of a lot of mistakes, and you might not make a ton of mistakes, but also at the same time, may not be your night where you go off with a phenomenal performance. In the NBA, it may not be your night that you drop 35 points and triple double. In baseball, maybe you don't go 3 for 4 with a home run, 2 doubles, and 3 RBIs. Or in baseball, you don't go 7 innings of shutout ball and you strike out 9 batters. Sometimes it's not going to be like that. And yesterday was a day where it wasn't going to be a Joe Mixon day. It just wasn't. And can somebody explain to me Zach Taylor's thought process? The San Francisco 49ers secondary was running on fumes. They were injured to hell and back. We're running on fumes. And they essentially ran cover 2 all day long. Zach Taylor thinks that the only solution to beating cover 2 or the Tampa 2 defense, cover 2 invert, you pick the type of defense. If he thinks that the only solution to beating that is running the football towards San Francisco's dominant front 4 and Fred Warner, their best linebacker on the team, what are we doing? You got the slot, you got attack outside the numbers. You wide open. Jamar Chase dropping slant routes at the beginning of the game. I mean, it's disgraceful. I understand that the defense did, got after the quarterback, sacked Garoppolo about 5 times, this, that, and the other. I understand all that. But the bottom line is, George Kittle had a monster game. George Kittle went off on the Bengals last night. And Zach Taylor saying, well, we tried everything he could. Did you, Zach? Because every single time I turn around, I was going to say Zach Ertz watching the Arizona game with the Arizona game in the background. But every single time I turn around, George Kittle was wide open on either on slant routes or on the seam routes up the middle, up the seam. Every single time I turn around, getting covered by corners and safeties that are significantly much smaller than he is. I understand he's the best. He's one of the best tight ends in the game, next to Kelsey and next to Mark Andrews. I understand all that, but you got to do something better. And can Zach Taylor do me a favor, please? Can Zach Taylor do me a favor and not sit up here and have the temerity, the audacity, and the chutzpah to sit up here and insult everybody's intelligence and saying, well, nobody wants to play us? Zach, you lost to the Jets, you lost to the Bears, and you also lost to you choked against the Chargers, and you were absolutely pathetic against the San Francisco 49ers. Don't sit up here for three quarters. Don't sit up here and tell me that, well, nobody wants to play us. I mean, give me a break. You're 7-6 with your season on the brink. I don't want to hear that right now.
I'm muted. Let me try that again. It was one of those games where they definitely should have drove down. They should have been more aggressive, in the red zone for sure. I mean, to fall behind, make that kind of comeback, only to fall in overtime is pretty sad. I think we lost Jai's video feed, but he'll be back in a minute. Another game, and I know Tony's back there. Let's talk about the Cowboys yesterday. The Cowboys. Oh, there, you're back. All right,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Tony, why don't you join us for the little Cowboy conversation here? There he is. There's our Cowboy fan. Cowboys, they made it look easy in the first half, but they let Washington come back. I mean, if they're going to make this playoff run that everyone's talking about, because basically they have the division wrapped up. I mean, after winning yesterday, winning in Washington, they should win at home against Washington, but they still need to, clock management, play calling at the end of the game, still holes in that Cowboy game plan. Am I right?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, in Washington was just kind of proof too that for whatever reason, since you don't have Zeke effectively running the ball, you don't have Pollard now because Pollard's out with a torn ligament in his foot.
Ooh.
We've noticed now that Dallas has started to veer away from the run game, but they're also not trying to make Dak force passes and put up 400 or 500 yards a game, which theoretically is fantastic. But we've also seen Dallas now go on a 4-3 runs since starting out 6-1. So
Right.
I mean it's one of those. As a Cowboys fan, am I excited they got the win? Yes, but should it have been significantly better than what it was? Also, yes, because if you think about it, really neither offense really did anything that was absolutely spectacular. Dallas's defense got a couple big plays as far as the Randy Gregory interception, and then of course Micah Parsons being able to get the sack with the fumble. Then basically the fumble at the end of the game to seal the win after they were like, yeah, we'll just put in all the backups. Washington will score. And then Dak throws a pick six. So to me, Dallas needs to be better as far as keeping their foot on the gas pedal. If you have Washington beat basically 24-0, yeah, they can score a couple of garbage time touchdowns. That's no big deal. But Dallas needs to focus more. You now have all three of your top wide receivers healthy. You have your offensive line isn't terrible. Dak needs to build a little bit better chemistry with some of the wide receivers. You still have your top tight end target in Dalton Schultz, but they have to figure out the run game too. I don't know if they need to sign somebody in free agency. Zeke is hurt with the knee. Corey Clement wasn't a great pickup to my personal opinion. And then they activated Harris, who was a rookie off of the practice squad, which again, he didn't really do anything. So to me, they need another running back to take the load off for Zeke, or at least be able to split the carry with Zeke. And I see Freddie in the comments talking trash when I know you're a Giants fan, so this is a little bit of a blow to you. And your Giants got obliterated by the Charger yesterday. So
yeah, well, don't get me started. That's a whole other show.
But we all know Freddie is a Packers fan. He will never say it, but Freddie's just happy that his man crush Aaron Rodgers won, and you know what? That's okay. That's okay that his man crush won. We're okay.
That's okay. Well, and the funny thing, and that's something I saw, and I mean, I kind of would like to see Washington make the playoffs because, I like Rivera. I like the fact that they're doing it with the Taylor Heineke, who kind of came out of nowhere, has been running the defense, who actually beat Tom Brady, who gave Tom Brady a challenge in last year's playoffs. I mean, Jai, Washington's defense is still a good, viable defense. I mean, they just seem to get a little outplayed yesterday, but I think if a matchup against them in the playoffs if they make the playoffs, they could be scary. Even if they make that 7 spot, they could be scary in that 7 spot.
The thing with Washington that you have to keep, and this was a bad loss. This is a bad loss on the part of Washington. They essentially let the Dallas Cowboys, and I said it on my show last week. I hate it when head coaches go out there and sit up there and essentially guarantee victories, and strut their feathers like a peacock to the media and sit up here and say, especially after how they played against the Saints the week before, where the Saints were giving the Cowboys the game, and the Cowboys like, no Saints, no Trevor Siemian, you have it. Right. But anyway, it's neither here nor there, because you back up your players into a corner when you do stuff like that. But Dallas should have, like you said, Dallas should have had the game wrapped up. The fact that Dak Prescott threw that just egregious pick six on that 2nd and 7 to give Washington a little bit of life and to give them a little bit of hope late in the later stages of the fourth quarter. That's not championship football, And they may be the one team that's contending in the across all of football right now where their quarterback may be the deciding factor of holding them back, because Dak Prescott, 22 of 39, 211 yards, 2 interceptions, that ain't good enough.
No.
And I say this all the time: when you have a quarterback that is throwing the ball more than, unless it's a shootout, and unless you're in a circumstance where you're playing from a deficit right from the opening kickoff, essentially, right from the opening quarter, throwing the ball 39 times in a game, especially when it's a defensive slugfest like yesterday was, 27-20. Well, I wouldn't say slugfest, but it was but there was a significant amount of defense being played in the game, but one really high scoring. You throwing the ball 39 times. That's not a recipe to beating the Packers, to beating Tampa, to beating the Rams, to beating the Cardinals in postseason play. It just isn't. You got to know how to work the clock, get that run game going, and know when you have your foot on the proverbial neck of your opponents. You got to know how to finish them off. And Washington, going back to your original question, they let Dallas talk their crap prior to this game. They let Mike McCarthy give a guarantee, and they let Dallas and the Cowboys and Jerry Jones bring their own benches up from Dallas.
Yeah, did you see that?
For the game. Now I understand the reason why, because apparently the benches there aren't necessarily the best, because somebody from the Seahawks organization picked up the phone and either called Jerry Jones or called Stephen Jones or called Mike McCarthy and told him this. But literally Dallas was disrespecting their opponent openly for about a week. And in the game, for a good portion of that game, Washington had no answers. Washington straight up got yesterday. They made it interesting because the Cowboys, love to make things interesting. They love, as Steve Nace says, when it counts, just wait. They'll let you down. The absolute waiting to happen. Dallas Cowboys from the last 25 years. But essentially prior to the Dak Prescott pick six, where it got a little bit interesting, where it's like, oh, holy crap, Washington might win this. The Cowboys absolutely punked Washington yesterday. Punked them. They talked their trash, went into their building, dominated them, and dared them to do something about it. Defense came to play. Micah Parsons, defensive player of the year. I don't care what anybody says. This guy is by far not T.J. Watt, not Aaron Donald. Hands down, best defensive player in football is Micah Parsons.
Yeah, he's been balling. It's amazing the kind of rookie season. They're saying he could be the first rookie to win Rookie of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year. He's having one of those kind of seasons. He definitely deserves it. Definitely deserves it. Well, let's move on to Buffalo and Tampa. Now, this another game where, and thank you, Tony, for joining us. Another game where you thought it was over. Buffalo makes a comeback, but as we all know, you give Tom Brady an opportunity, he's going to burn you every time. And he goes to an old veteran, Brett Perryman, down the middle, outrunning everybody. And once again, Tampa prevailed. I don't see Tampa, having a loss the rest of the year. I mean, they could go 14-3 at this point. They look good there, and they're getting healthy. Their guys are coming back. They're getting healthy. I'm not sure what they're going to do about Antonio Brown once he comes back from his suspension. I'm not sure if they're going to bring him back. Oh, there he is. Ray, you got your mic's finally working, right?
Yeah, I got it working. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you. There you go. All right, cool. Ray's here. Awesome. So Ray, I'll let you jump in first about the Buffalo-Tampa game yesterday, how, Tampa let Buffalo come back, and then Buffalo had opportunities to win the thing, and then once again, Tom pulls it out in the end.
Yeah, there's a lot of notes that are going on with this game too. I've been doing a lot of research on this game and stuff like that. And when Tom Brady was running and stuff like that, if you didn't notice that Bruce Harrison gives him the look, saying why he's running so much and not sliding. And then after the game, he gave him an earful in the locker room and a private session between him and Tom Brady, not getting his butt down, because he knows if he lose Tom Brady, then they have no backup for him. So that's another issue in this game too, that he did run the ball a little bit too much for my liking and for his age too. If he gets that one wrong hit, he's done. Could be out for the year, and that could mess up their chance. But you got to give your heads off to the Bills. So they made a comeback, but then they got an overtime, and then Tom Brady's going to be Tom Brady to pull the game out. So I mean, the Bills didn't give up. They fight all throughout the game, pushed the Bucs to a limit, but still, Buffalo has not been it has not been the same since they lost to the Jaguars.
No. So it's all your team's fault since Buffalo's demise. So obviously, we're not going to see our friend Adam Shine probably jumping through that table this year, are we, Jai?
We might not. And it's funny because I talked to Adam earlier this morning about my Bengals squad, but it's funny. I didn't watch this game as closely as I would have liked, because it directly went up against the Bengals game, which was a little bit of a negative, because I was really looking forward to deep diving into this game. So I watched as much as I could in between plays of Cincinnati, and Cincinnati's game ended, it went by much quicker than the Tampa game did. But what I saw was the fact that, the Buffalo Bills, they and Cincinnati had the same issues yesterday. They both waited way too long to wake up from sleepwalking, essentially through 3/4 of the game. Waited way too long to wake up from their sleepwalk and sit up here and say, "Oh, we're in a game now. It's December football. We're playing for our playoff lives. We got to wake up and go and try to take down an NFC champion." 49ers from 2019, Tampa Bay Buccaneers from 2020. And another thing, Buffalo's problem is that they cannot run the football.
No.
When Josh Allen is your leading rusher, 12 carries, 109 yards, and touchdown, that's a problem. You got and it's so bad that you can't force the issue with running the football, because Singletary and Burrito, you can't run the ball, especially inside the red zone like they did last Monday night against New England Patriots. You cannot run the football with those guys and expect to do well. But at the same time, they should have either found a way to address it during the trading deadline, and they definitely their lack of running game is going to be the reason why they won't win the Super Bowl. They have to address this issue in the offseason, because they cannot run the football. And like the Ravens, you cannot always win games when the ball is in your quarterback's hand all the time. It's like basketball. Basketball, you can be good. You can. It's like you know what it's like. It's Westbrook on the Wizards. It's Westbrook on OKC after KD left. Are you going to be good with them on your team? Yes, because they're that talented and they're that great of a caliber player. But on the flip side, you're not going to win championships playing that way, because albeit you have the one great player, you got to give them a supporting cast around them. The ball cannot be in their hands every single moment, every single play, every single down of every single game. Right. And if Josh Allen has to throw the ball 54 times and run it for 12 times for $109, that's a tremendous issue. They should have addressed it in the trading deadline, and they absolutely have to address it later on in the offseason, because and nothing's over. And the same thing with the Bengals and the Bills. Now understand that the Bills, they made it to the AFC Championship game last year. The Bengals obviously, had 4 losses, and Joe Burrow lost for the season midway through. It's a little bit different. But when you have had high expectations coming into this season, the Bengals' expectations has grown significantly as the weeks and as the months have gone by, as we get deeper and deeper into the season. Right. You're Cincinnati. You missed the playoffs. I don't care what you say. And the grand scheme of things, is it deemed as a success? Yes. On paper, yes, it is. But you're 5-2. You're 5-2. And you're 2-4 essentially since the Raven game. You're Buffalo. You lost to the Steelers. You got your head on straight. You lost to the Jaguars, and we haven't been able to find you guys since. Well,
Yeah.
okay. So you beat up on Trevor Siemian and the Saints on Thanksgiving night. Whoop de damn do. You're supposed to do that.
Right.
Same the same thing with Buffalo. Buffalo now on the case of the Bengals, you make it to the playoffs, you maybe win a game, season's a success. Buffalo making it to the playoffs or winning one playoff game, that's not good enough. You got to your aspiration and your expectation is to go to maybe not win, but go to the Super Bowl.
Right.
The championship game in the previous season. And because of the fact that they don't have a run game and the fact they are so one-dimensional on offense, I'm concerned. And again, defense can't stop the run. Leonard Fournette, 19 carries, $113 and a touchdown.
Right.
I mean, and their secondary is supposed to be the strongest part of their defensive unit. Brady was 31 of 46, 363, and 2 touchdown passes. Only got to Brady twice. It's unacceptable. Bucks should have put the game away. But if you're Buffalo, you can't sleepwalk through these games. Not during this time of the year. Not going up against Super Bowl contending opponents like Tampa. You can't do it, or else you'll be sitting on your couch so fast in early January you won't know what hit you.
No,
you'll be on your couch by Dr. King Day.
Exactly. Very true. Very, very true. Yeah, it's amazing how these teams start off hot, and then when it comes down to crunch time, the veterans seem to pull through towards the end. The last game I want to talk about is the Baltimore-Cleveland game yesterday. A very interesting game because Lamar Jackson gets hurt early, and their backup Hundley comes in, rallies them in the second half after Cleveland's up 24-0 at halftime, and Baltimore comes back and scores 22 points. I'm sorry, they're up 14-6 at halftime. Baltimore makes it 22-24. But the bottom line is, Cleveland had a decent lead on this team. Knowing you got a backup quarterback, even in that running system, Cleveland's got to put them away. For Cleveland not to adjust in the second half is just, it's showing once again that this Cleveland team wants to get there, but they just can't get there. So, Jai, just give me a quick take on this Cleveland defense, almost blowing it yesterday, keeping themselves in playoff contention, but I can't see them, making any noise. Even if they make the playoffs, I can't see this team making any noise.
Well, listen, give Cleveland credit. They've played well at home this year. They're 5-2 at First Energy Stadium. Look at their schedule. They got Vegas. They got Vegas coming up on Saturday. They can play back-to-back. It's funny. The Cleveland does not play on a Sunday until the last game of the season on January the 9th. They do not play again on a Sunday until the last game of the season.
They've got two Saturdays and then the Monday night game against Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah. I didn't even realize that. I was like, oh, holy crap! Yesterday that was their last Sunday game of the actual 2021 calendar year. But if you're Cleveland, they got a decent schedule. They should take care of business against the Raiders to move on. The Browns defense should absolutely dominate that game. As long as the Browns score about 17 points, they should be okay. They'll be 8-6. They beat Cleveland. Green Bay and Pittsburgh are the two games I worry about because they're not going to beat Green Bay, especially on the road in Lambeau. Just because of how injured they are, and Aaron Rodgers obviously over Baker Mayfield, and then of course with Pittsburgh, those games are always close, always competitive, rivalry game. Pittsburgh may be playing for pride if they're out of playoff contention by that time.
And Roethlisberger is going to go out swinging. He's not going down without a fight.
100%, especially on the road in Cleveland.
Yeah.
And then on top of the fact, Cleveland might still be playing for something too come January 3rd. And then when they close out against my Bengals, we'll go from there. But if you're Cleveland, if you're Cleveland, you should have had that game bottled up right then and there. The fact that you allowed Tyler Taylor Huntley, whatever his name is, to pull black magic out of a hat again. He did it against the Bears a couple weeks ago, and to allow him to do it again today, that's very alarming and very concerning on the part of the Cleveland Browns. Their offense couldn't put the dagger in the Ravens to get the one more first down or get the one more score offensively to put the game away. Baker Mayfield. I give Baker Mayfield a ton of credit for having heart and going out there and giving it his all, but he's clearly not right. Nick Chubb was not much of a factor, as we all know. The Ravens play absolutely phenomenal against the run. But if you're Cleveland, beat the Raiders, and you'll be sitting at 8-6, and you should be in pretty decent shape. I don't expect you to beat to beat Green Bay after that. But if you beat the Raiders on Saturday, and you get a little bit of help, and you hold your breath and you hit your knees, maybe I give them about like a 60-65% chance of making it. Yeah. If they win on Saturday.
Yeah, if they win Saturday, that's the last Sunday night game against Cleveland and Cincinnati might be the Sunday night football game to see who gets into the playoffs. You never know. It could come down to that.
100%.
It'd be interesting. So, Ray, go ahead.
Sorry to cut you off, but last thing, the Saturday game against Vegas comes down to the defense. Myles Garrett has to get his defensive compadres in the defensive meeting room and say, "Hey guys, don't expect if our offense goes off and that's a phenomenal performance on Saturday, great. Here's the bottom line: we hold the Raiders to under 17 points. We hold the Raiders to 14, 10 points, or keep them out of the end zone. We're going to win this game because our offense will do well enough, and we will give them opportunities where we will make it easier for them, easier for Nick Chubb to run the football, make a couple of easy throws for Baker Mayfield. All we got to do as a defense, if the Raiders score less than 17 points, they score 14 points or less, we're not going to lose. If I'm Myles Garrett, I'm like, we get after Derek Carr, we make life a living hell, we force turnovers, score off of turnovers, scoop and scores, pick six, whatever you got to do. This is a game coming up in about 6 days. This is a game that the Cleveland Browns defense has to take over and essentially be their offense,
right?
Just to compensate.
Definitely. All right, Ray. Quick take on the Baltimore side of the ball. Lamar Jackson getting hurt. They say he might be back this week. They might not. They basically run the same offensive scheme with their quarterback. I mean, this Baltimore team is in big trouble at this point. With injuries, with a lack of a running back. Again, we talked about before about Josh Allen being Buffalo's leading runner, Lamar Jackson or Hundley being their leading runner. I mean, we keep on repeating the same thing every week, but Baltimore they don't listen to our show. They don't listen to us. We know what we're talking about here. So. I mean, this Baltimore team, they should be better than they are, but they're not, right, Ray?
But you got to look at it this way, too. Hundley is a same offense, same scheme. But what Hundley does is he provides the passing option that he's more consistent than Lamar Jackson is at the time. Lamar Jackson, he can run the ball, but he's inaccurate on the passes. He's not consistent enough. But Hundley showed me yesterday that he is a little bit more consistent. So that gave Cleveland another alternative they have to prepare for. And when Hundley came in, they weren't prepared for that because they were preparing for Lamar Jackson. And you know how inconsistent he is, and they're not really paying attention to the pass. So when you put Hundley in there, now he gives you the double dose. He can actually pass the ball a little bit more accurate than Lamar Jackson. That gives them another option in this Baltimore offense. And this Baltimore offense can be effective with Hundley in the backfield if the defense can play Baltimore Raven defense. I mean, look at what the year they won the Super Bowl. Ray Lewis led that defense. They had a defense. They had Trent Dilfer as the quarterback who don't turn the ball over. I mean, they didn't turn the ball over. Hundley passed for 270 yards, 27 out of 38, 1 touchdown, no interception. He did get sacked 3 times for 16-yard loss, but I mean, his QBR was 57.4. So I mean, look at any of that. I mean, he kept them in the game. He kept them, almost brought them back to the win. So I mean, Cleveland wasn't ready for it until Cleveland got to the hang of it where he's passing the ball. We need to play a little bit more pass defense. And that's what kind of helped them involve in the win. So, I mean, you got to understand with Cleveland, too, you got Baker Mayfield's not 100%. And if he is, he's not really giving you too much. He was 22 out of 32, 190 yards. Nick Chubb is not giving you but 59 yards rushing out of 17. And then Johnson only gave you 4 for 22. And then Baker got 6 for 14 and Hunt 2 for 5. No. So, I mean, you look at that. If you look at that scheme right there, you can play the pass on Cleveland and make them run the ball. They're not showing they can run the ball. So, I mean, that's the end of the fact. Which two of these teams can, play balanced offense?
Exactly. Yeah, no. It's gonna come down in the next couple weeks for a lot of the teams we talked about tonight are gonna be very interesting. A lot of them are playing for their playoff lives. So it definitely should be some good December football. Unfortunately, guys, we are out of time, man. This hour flew by fast. Jai, thanks for joining us tonight, man. Really appreciate you having you in the house. You know, you're welcome anytime on Bring It. You know, anytime. We got to get you on the network, get you on some other shows, man. We'll pop some knowledge on some other things. So we'll be talking for sure. Ray, glad you got your mic fixed. Thank you for popping in. Tony, our producer, thank you always for jumping in. And of course, our special guest, Jeffrey Rasley. Go check out his new book, A Pickleball Soap Opera, Love, Murder, and Pickleball, available on Amazon and other book outlets. And everyone stay safe out there. You know, be kind to each other. You know, it's the holiday season. It's all about family and being kind to each other. And we will see everybody next week. Peace out.
Peace.
All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. 365, we making up plays. You talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. Hitting the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, like working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces.